A very good morning to all. Welcome to the second session of TIE Facts on Finance for Non-Finance Advanced. We have with us Ms. Aparna Ram Mohan, an active charter member of TIE Chennai and MD of Sri Sattva Group, who will be taking the first half of the session. And also we have Mr. M.S. Jagan, active charter member of TIE Chennai and an independent consultant guiding various startups, and the ex-CEO of Ascendas India Private Limited. Now, I request Ms. Aparna Mohan to take over. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. So today we will be discussing about cash flows, and we'll also be discussing on a couple of ratios. So to take this forward, I'm going to share my screen with you, wherein I'll talk to you about various concepts. And as the last session, please continue to chat your queries. After every 20-25 minutes, we'll stop. We'll answer all the queries and then we'll proceed. So I'm hoping everyone can see me, can hear me, and can see my screen. So we will be starting with cash flow statements today. Cash flow statement, as I spoke to you in the previous session, have three components other than the opening cash balance. Just for the sake of those who were not a part of my previous session, whenever I use the term cash, it also means bank balance, because I'm not going to keep regularly using cash and bank as two different words. Whenever I say cash, for the sake of this discussion, it also means bank balance, or predominantly means bank balance. So we will start with the opening cash balance or bank balance, as the case may be, and both. So we will call it cash and cash equivalents. We will add net cash flow from operating activities. I will talk to you about what those are. We will also have net cash flows from investing activity. And then we will have net cash flow from financing activity. So these are the three major types of cash flows. Basically, these are three categories of cash flows, where all the cash transactions or the bank transactions are categorized into, and then that's added or subtracted, as the case may be, to the opening balance, and that should lead to your closing balance. What is your closing balance? Your closing balance is that part of the it's that balance which forms a part of your balance sheet asset date. So cash flow and balance sheet balance, they are not two independent numbers, they are the same numbers. So let me draw a mock P&L and balance sheet for you. So I'm going to start with EBITDA. We don't need, for the cash flow purpose, we don't need the information of the content prior to EBITDA. Let's start with EBITDA. Let's assume it is 1,000. Then I'm going to reduce depreciation and amortization from it. Let's assume it's 150. And that's going to give me my EBIT. I am going to then reduce interest from it. Let's assume that's something like 200. That's going to give me EBT. And then I'm going to reduce tax from it. I'm going to randomly assume 25% of my EBT is tax. So I'm going to round this off to, let's say, 160. They're all mock numbers. Don't get into too much details on that. And then EAT. For those of you who are new, who were not a part of previous session, I'm going to use interchangeably E and P. So PBT is profit before tax, EBT is earning before tax. Similarly, EAT is earning after tax, and it's same as PAT, which is PAT, which is profit after tax. Some of you are using my screen to draw some lines. Please don't do it. Request you to not do that. So I'm having an EAT or PAT of 490 here. Let's draw a mock balance sheet as well. So on my balance sheet, I'm going to have capital first. Let's assume it's 100. I'm going to have some reserves. I am assuming it's something like this. Don't give it too much thought. It's just their mock numbers. And then I'm going to have some long-term liabilities. Okay, let me split this. Let me split this as debt. Don't worry whether it's secured debt, unsecured debt. It really doesn't matter from a cash flow perspective. So let's say I have some debt of 500. And with that, I'm closing my liability side of balance sheet. On my asset side of balance sheet, I've got, let's say, some 800 worth of, okay, let's say some 600 worth of fixed assets. I'm going to call this net fixed assets. For those of you who were a part of previous session, net fixed assets is gross fixed assets less accumulated depreciation. So that's my net fixed assets. I have some kind of an investment here of, let's say, 125. Okay, I'm going to keep it round of figure of, let's say, 150. I am also going to have some cash and bank balance. Let's assume, let me take it as 450. Okay, yeah, let's keep it as 4. Let's keep it at 250. Then I have got some current assets other than cash and bank. I've got some other current assets. I'll tell you what amount it is. And then I'm going to do less of current liabilities. And this should tie up with my balance sheet. So I need a net of 790 for the balance sheet to tie up. So I'm going to make this 350. I need 690. And if I need 690, let me take this as 1200. And let's take current liabilities as 510. With that, I am done. Now, if I am going to prepare something like this data is not enough for me to prepare cash flows. Because from a balance sheet perspective, I need the opening balance also. I'll tell you why. We are talking about net cash flow from operating activities. Okay. And similarly, net cash flow from investing activities and net cash flow from financing activity. So before we get into details, let me give you an overall of what this is. So if I am going to have something like an opening balance of 10 and a net cash flow of 30 and a net cash flow from investing activity of 20 and some net cash flow from financing activity as 30. So technically, my closing balance should be this, 90. Okay. Now, what is net cash flow? Net cash flow is inflow less outflow. Okay. Now, anything which is cash inflow less cash outflow is net cash flow. Now, this is how we will be categorizing all the three of them: operating, investing, and financing activity, all three of them. Now that we have understood what net cash flow means, let's understand what operating activity means. I don't think there is any confusion on what opening cash balance is. If my current financial year, if I'm drawing a cash flow statements on 31st March 2020, then my opening balance will be cash balance which I had as on 1st April 2019, because that's the beginning of my financial year. Okay. Then what is net cash flow? It is for a period. It is not as in date. So the cash flows that I had from April 1st to March 31st is what I will quantify here for all three of them. Next, what is going to be my closing balance? My closing balance is going to be on the same date on which I am drawing this cash flow statement. Now, what is operating activities? Operating activities is nothing but all the cash flows which are impacted because of operations. Okay. Now, all the cash inflows which comes from regular course of operations and all the cash outflow which again comes from regular course of operation. The net of the two is operating activity, net cash flow from operating activity. Now, what is operations? Operations is that part of the business for which you are actually running the business. Why are you running the business? What is the main agenda or purpose of running the business? Let's say you are a ready-made garment manufacturer. If you're a ready-made garment manufacturer, your your actual purpose of the business is to manufacture and sell ready-made garment. Now, in that case, what might happen is some of the ready-made garments which you have made might actually there might be quality defects in it, right? There might be defects or quality issues in it. Now, what will you do with that? You will not be able to sell it at the same price what you will be able to sell the good output, right? So the defect output will always sell at a price lesser than the good output. Now, if you have a market for garments with defect, you will be able to sell it at a lesser price. But if there's no market for defect garment, ready-made garment, then you will sell it at scrap price. Now, what you sell it at scrap price is not what you're doing business for. You're doing business for the main product that you're manufacturing. Now, all that inflow, that is revenue which comes in or cash which comes in for your main operations is cash inflow from operating activities, and the cash which goes out to get that final output sold. So all your direct expense, indirect expense, all sorts of expense which actually are necessary to be able to manufacture and sell the main output of your business to the final consumer. That is operating expenses. So operating revenue minus operating cash flows minus operating cash outflows is what is your net cash outflow. Let me explain in detail. Don't worry about it. I'm just giving you some basic understanding. Now, investing is whatever. So now, so by now you would have figured out that operating activities is something which is impacted. It is a result of your P&L, because you're doing business to earn revenue. To earn revenue, you are incurring a cost, right? So whatever is operating cash inflow and operating cash outflow will get routed through your income statement. So this is that number. Your earning before interest, depreciation, tax, and amortization. What is that? What is that? That's basically your interest is not what you're doing business for, right? So if you're earning interest, or if you're actually earning interest on your FD, or if you're paying interest on your borrowings, that's not the purpose of your business. That is only support, because you are, for whatever reasons, you've got issues in your cash flows and you have to depend on external funds, and you are paying a price on that external funds. That is your finance cost or your interest on your debt. That's not the purpose of your business. That's ancillary. That's additional to your regular course of activity. Similarly, if you've got extra cash, you put it in FD and you're earning interest out of it. That's not the purpose of your business. That is additional. You're not wasting the cash. You're not keeping the cash idle. Instead, you're putting the cash in an FD for it to earn some incremental income. That's again a non-operating income. So all your non-operating expense and income comes below your EBITDA line item. So that's about the interest part of it. Whether it is an interest income or it is an interest expense. Now, depreciation and amortization, if you remember, depreciation and amortization is a non-cash flow item. Right? It is a provision, it is a reserve that you have created so that at the end of certain period or the useful life of the fixed asset, you can use that reserve and replace the fixed asset which has actually finished its useful life, right? So now what really happens here is you have not really made any cash outflow and there is no cash inflow. It is just a charge to the profit and loss account, so that you have declared the right amount of expense for that year because you've used the fixed asset to that extent. So it's again not a cash flow. Now these concepts will become important now when we are getting into how to calculate the cash flows. And then there is tax. Tax, everybody knows about it. There is no non-cash part of it. It is absolutely cash part of it. You have to pay that, right? But that's not again what you're doing business for, but you don't have a choice. It's a part of the statutory compliance and you'll have to pay taxes, right? Now, when I say taxes, this is income tax, okay? GST or indirect tax is not how it comes. It does not impact the P&L. It goes directly to the balance sheet. Now coming back, so this is one concept of operating activities that completely flows from the P&L. Now there is second part to the operating activities which flows from current assets and current liabilities. Remember the short-term assets and the short-term liabilities we discussed. Now short-term assets and short-term liability, which gives you your net working capital, is again a part of your operating activities, right? It is a part of your main course of business. So everything which comes as a part of, if any impact on the current assets and any impact on the current liabilities will impact your net cash flows. Okay, we'll go into detail. I'll explain you that as well. But I've kept cash and bank balance outside the outside the current assets because this is your closing balance. This is what your cash flow will tie up to. Now, investing activities is something what you're actually using your cash to be invested into the business. So when I say invested into the business, from as an accountant, as a finance person, to the whenever we relate it to the balance sheet, the assets will sit in the balance sheet. Now we have already categorized that current assets and current liabilities are a part of operating activities. So from the asset side of the balance sheet, I have removed current assets and current liabilities that goes to operating part of it, right? Now, cash and bank is the closing balance I've explained. So that also will not get impacted. Now, what is left? Fixed assets and investments. Now, this is a part of your investing activity. This is a part of your investing activity. So whatever you invest, right? Whatever you invest will be a cash outflow because you've actually paid cash, acquired asset. I know you've acquired asset. That's why it's coming in the balance sheet. But from a cash perspective, you've paid out cash. The cash goes out. So it is cash outflow from investing activities. Similarly, investment. Whenever you make an investment, it is an asset, true. But how do you procure that asset? You actually pay out cash, right? So it's again cash outflow from investment, right? Cash outflow from investment. Now, in that case, what really happens is when you sell a fixed asset or when you sell an investment, cash will come in, right? Whenever you sell an investment or sell an asset, cash will come in. Now, that is the cash inflow from investing activities. It could be more, it could be less. That's not the point that we are discussing now. But what we're trying to discuss, we're not talking about whether there'll be a profit or loss from the investment sale or the fixed asset sale. What we are actually talking about is what is the cash inflow into the business. So whenever you sell the asset and there's an inflow, that's a cash inflow from investing activity. Whenever you invest in a fixed asset or invest in an investment, that's a cash outflow from investing activity. Now, there is operations, there is investment. Now, something has to fund all of this. That's the finance part of it. Typically, there are two sources of finance, right? There is capital and then there is borrowings, right? So these are typically the two forms of financing activity. So if you add capital to your business, then that's a net cash flow. Sorry, that's a cash inflow that comes in from increase in capital. Similarly, if you are raised funds, then there's cash inflow, which comes as a part of the borrowing increase. Now, whenever you repay the debt, then that's cash outflow, right? So cash outflow from financing activity is repayment. So that is typically how it is. Okay. Now let's get into the details. Now tell me, has the capital increased or decreased? We don't know. We don't know if the capital has increased or decreased. So let's take that I've got a previous year, I had a capital of 50. So which means that the capital has increased. So let me just quickly draw balance sheet for 20. Reserves and surplus of 700. Then again, let me assume that there was some debt. Okay. Let me assume that there was some fixed assets. Of course, I'm making a growing balance sheet, but ignore it. It's just for the sake of it. Let me keep investment same. Let me say there was a opening balance of 150, and then let me say that, oh, I need to find the difference. So let's see the difference. Right, so my balance sheet tallies. Now, how do we plot this? EBITDA. Right? What is my EBITDA? No, sorry. Where it will begin, ignore all of this. Let's start here. So what's my opening cash balance as on 1st April 2019? I will find it in the previous year balance sheet. It is 150. Then what is my net cash outflow? Let me find out one by one. What is my EBITDA? I will add my EBITDA because all my operating cash inflows minus operating cash. I will not my finance cost. My finance cost is definitely a cash flow item. So I'm going to reduce. I paid for it. I'm going to reduce it. What is my another cash item? It's tax. I have paid this out. So this has gone out in cash as well. So I'm going to take this out. Now net operating profit. This is what we call it as. So let's just keep it paid out and it's less tax which I've paid out. I have got 640 here. Now, whether there is an increase in current assets, in current liabilities, I would this, my assets have increased. Okay, I guess you can hear me now. So some technical glitch. I think they wanted you guys to take a break. So let me share this back with you. Okay. So I'm of increase in current assets, right? So inventory, receivables, two of them is enough for us to just understand. Yes. So what happens when there is an increase in inventory? Whenever you blocked your funds, right? Your cash is blocked, right? So your cash is stuck as in. So increase in your cash flow, right? So increase in inventory have increased. What does it mean? It just means that cash is blocked in your customers. Similarly, so here if my inventory, right? Similarly, if my sorry, I think there's some technical issue. I keep getting dropped.
So I request all the participants who are sharing. I'm Saurav here. I'm sorry to interrupt. So I just request all the participants to stop sharing their video because that can get the bandwidth better. So anybody who's sharing their videos can kindly stop. Thank you. You can continue, ma'am. Thank you.
Videos and also stop. Some of you are drawing on my screen. Please don't do that. It's pretty tough. Okay. Receivable cash is stuck with the customers. It's not helping from my cash perspective, right? So which means whenever there's an increase in current assets, it has decreased by 20. That means I've sold, right? I have sold. So that should increase my cash flow position. Now again, if there is a decrease in receivables, that means my customer has paid me. So my cash flow increases. So it's an inverse combination. So whenever there's an increase in current assets, my cash flow decreases. Whenever there is a decrease in current assets, my cash flow increases. Now, same thing. Let's see from a current liabilities perspective. I'm just going to take one example. Let's take short-term borrowings, short-term debt. Now, if my short-term debt increases, what happened? That means cash flow has come in, correct? Because I've increased my borrowing, cash flow has come in. If my short-term debt decreases, that means I have repaid. If I have repaid, what happens? My cash flow has gone out, right? My cash flow has gone out. Similarly, creditors. If my creditors has increased, that means I have not paid. I have not paid. If I have not paid, my cash flow doesn't technically increase, but it remains the same. But for the purpose of cash flows, we will assume that cash flows increases because we've not paid. Now again, cash flow decreases. If we pay creditors, then we have paid. Cash flow goes out. That means cash flow decreases, right? So if your current liability increases, cash flow increases. If your current liabilities decreases, then your cash flow decreases because you've paid out, right? But with current assets, it's the reverse. Now, what has happened here? What has happened here? So let's go to current assets. My current assets have increased. If my current assets have increased, what has really happened is I have blocked my cash. I have actually blocked my cash. Now, what has happened in case of current liabilities? It has also increased. That means to that extent, I have not paid off, which really means that to that extent, there is an increase in cash flow. Okay. Now let's go to investing activities. From an investing activities perspective, what is happening? Have I invested something? Yes. My net fixed assets is increased by 200. That means I have invested. So what has happened? Increase in FA. What has happened? I have paid out because my fixed assets, I have procured more assets. So I have paid out. What happened to investment? What has happened to investment? Nothing has happened. It has not changed. So no cash movement from an investment perspective. So zero. Now let's go to financing activities. Capital, what has happened? It has increased. Can you see it has increased from 50 to 100? That means I've got money. I have gotten money. Okay, reserves we have already considered. So don't ignore it. We won't consider it again. How have we considered reserves? Do you remember what is reserves? Reserves is opening balance plus current profit after tax. So we have already considered the current year's cash flow, previous year reserves, we don't have to consider. Borrowings, what has happened? Increased by 150. So let us see what happens here. What is your cash balance? Now your cash balance shows 400. Okay, your cash balance shows 400, but actually your cash balance here is only 350. So what is your difference? There is a difference of actual closing balance. So what is it? There is a difference of 50 rupees. So let's identify where the difference is, right? So we have got a difference of 50 rupees, right? So where all could we have missed out? So we have considered opening balance correctly. We have considered closing balance correctly. We have an increase. We have an increase in current assets to the extent of 500. If any of you can find the mistake, please go ahead and prompt on the chat. I've got an increase in current liabilities. I've got 110 here. I've got an increase in FA. So I've got minus 200 here. I have got increase in debt. That is to the extent of 150. That's also sorted. That's also coming in. I've gotten a capital increase. I've got a capital increase of 50. That is also considered. I have gotten an EBITDA. Let's check once again. So there's an EBITDA of 1,000. I have reduced the finance costs from it. I have reduced the tax from it. I have not considered depreciation. Yes, I have not considered depreciation. So that should be okay. So where are we losing out? by 50 rupees. Here balance sheet tallies, here balance sheet tallies. Yes, of course. Here the balance sheet doesn't tally. Here the balance sheet doesn't tally, right? So now your balance sheet tallies here. So now we've got a difference of 100. So what's that? I've got a decrease here, I've got an increase here, and I've got an increase, I've got a decrease in FA here. So now my closing balance is increased to 500, but my actual cash flow closing balance is 350. So there's a difference of 150. So where are we missing out? Did I consider that? Yes, of course. Okay, so I'm going to find the difference and come back to you. So meanwhile, let me take your questions. So let me take your questions by the time I find the difference and come back to you. Are there? Yes, check 18-19 balance sheet, not tallying, correct? I have done that. Yes, of course, March 19 balance sheet, I've tallied it now. Is there any other point that I'm missing here? Okay, I don't have any questions yet, so please go ahead, type your questions. By the time I'm going to check. By the time I'm going to check, where are we going wrong? So since, so yes, I'm going to keep you on the screen so that you guys can see as well. So we've got capital, which is increased. We've got reserves. We have considered as well. We've got debt. Got depreciation. Okay. Okay. Yes. So tell me where did we go wrong, right? Here is where we've gone wrong, right? So if you see, I have directly taken the difference between net fixed assets 400 and 600. I have not adjusted the non-cash flow part of it. What's the non-cash flow part of it? The depreciation part of it. Have I adjusted? No, sorry. Yes. So I have not adjusted the non-cash flow part of it. So I have to consider the depreciation as well. Depreciation is a non-cash outflow. So I have to remove. So what I have to really do is I have to consider the depreciation back and adjust it, right? So with that, our cash flow tally. So actual increase in fixed assets will be the gross fixed assets part of it, not the net fixed assets. So here, let me just show you the breakup. So I don't know what my gross fixed assets is because I have no idea. I took a net fixed asset of 600 and 400. So I'm going to assume here for the current year, I know that the depreciation is 150. Okay. So again, it's a matter of assumption. Here, my gross fixed assets will be 150 plus 600. And my gross, I'm considering it here. So the difference between the two is 350. I've actually added 350. So my cash outflow is not 200. My cash outflow towards fixed assets is actually 350. Right? So actual cash outflow will not consider depreciation. It will be the real asset that you have purchased. Right? That is to the extent of 350, which is why there was a difference. So with this, we have tallied our cash flow. This is how we prepare our cash flows. Okay. Now, if we don't have any questions, then I'm going to very quickly move on to ratios. Okay. So I'm going to move to ratios now. There are multiple types of ratios. Let me just stop sharing the screen and let me share another screen with you. Yes, don't worry. If there are questions, I'm going to handle those as well. Don't worry about it. Let me quickly go and get into ratios so that because we have less time. So let me cover the concepts of ratios as well. Okay. So now there are multiple types of ratios. We have got liquidity ratios. What is liquidity ratios? Liquidity ratios are those metrics which actually determine the ability of an organization to pay out. So how liquid is my situation? Do I have enough current assets which covers my current liabilities? Do I have, so we've got multiple types of ratios in it, which we will discuss. We have got types of ratios which talks about the under liquidity ratio. We've got current ratio. We've got right? So we've got current ratio. We've got, so in case some of you can't see my screen well, I'm just going to increase the size. We've got something called day sales outstanding, which we call it as receivable ratio. To what extent does your receivable turn around into sales? That's what this ratio is about. Then we will be talking about days purchase ratios, which is again to the extent of to what extent does your purchases turn around to your creditors. Then we will be talking about days inventory ratio, which talks about to what extent does your inventory turn around in relation to your cost for the inventory. Okay, so let's start with the current ratio. Current ratio is basically a simple formula of current ratio is current assets minus current liabilities, right? So you simply find out the difference between, net working capital is current assets minus current liabilities, right? Now current ratio is current assets divided by current liabilities, okay? So basically what it really means is how much is my current assets as a percentage of current liabilities, right? This is what it really means. So let me show this in an Excel to you. It'll be faster and easier. So here, if you see, how do we calculate current ratio? We will take current assets divided by current liabilities. Here I've kept it in minus, that's why I've taken it as minus, right? So what it says is 2.35. 2.35 is my ratio. What is an ideal ratio? If I have a ratio more than 1 as current ratio, then it is an ideal ratio. That is, I've got at least to the minimum as much current liabilities, I've got as much current assets as much I've got in current liabilities. So to that extent, I am doing well. If my current assets are lesser than my current liabilities, then what it will do is, it will actually mean that I have not got enough current assets to cover my current liabilities. Current assets includes, sorry, there's a mistake here. Current assets include your cash and bank balance as well. Okay. So if that's less, that means you're not doing too well. Now there is another concept called quick ratio. Now quick ratio means all the ratios, all the current, a part of the current assets, which can be very quickly turned around. I'm going to take an example that inventory in my previous case where I'm saying current assets of 1,200, I'm saying inventory out of this is 200. Okay, so what will be my current assets for the purpose of quick ratio? It will be cash balance plus cash, so plus all the current assets minus inventory. Not just inventory, I'll tell you what it really means. Quick ratio is anything which I can convert quickly into cash. If I have got bank balance and that is quick cash, I can convert it. If I've got receivables, I can speak to the customer. There's a chance I can quickly convert it. But if I've got, let's say, an RD, or let's say I've got stuff, fixed assets which cannot really go on, which cannot be really encashed very quickly, right? Which cannot be really encashed as at a very short period of time. All that you will remove. All that you will remove from your current assets. You will remove all that part of it, right? So we will assume that inventory cannot be quickly converted to cash, so we remove inventory. We will remove those part of cash and cash equivalents which cannot be quickly received. Those part of receivables which you know you cannot quickly receive, all that you will remove from them. That balance, quick convertible current assets divided by your entire current liability is your quick ratio. Okay. Then we will see what is days sales outstanding. Okay. So for those of you who would like to see the full form, it's days sales outstanding. Okay. Now days sales outstanding, the formula for it is average sales, average receivables. I'll tell you what average receivables is. Average receivables divided by average receivables divided by revenue per day. Okay. So what we are really trying to find out is what is the how many days does it take for my receivables to come back? What is my actual credit period? That's what we are trying to find out. Okay. So let's take from the same example as above. What is my average sales? Average receivables, I'm sorry. Average receivable is, okay, I don't have a breakup there, so I'm going to give it an example. I'm going to give breakup for receivables here. I'm going to say my receivable is, let's say, 800. And here, let's say it is 600. Okay. Let's say 550. Okay. So now what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to find out the day sales outstanding. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take an average of my receivable closing balance plus opening balance divided by 2 is my average receivable. Okay. Average receivable divided by revenue per day. What is my revenue? Okay, I have not given my revenue as well here. So I'm going to take an assumption. My revenue, let's say my EBITDA is 1000. Let's say my revenue is let's say 2200. Okay, I'm taking my revenue as 2200. So what is my per day revenue? My annual revenue divided by 365. Okay, now what is my DSO? My DSO will be equal to average receivables divided by revenue per day. So that means it takes me 111 days to collect my debtor from my debtor, which is pretty bad. So if you note, it is actually pretty bad. If my sales for the year is 2200, then please note, if my sales for the year is 2200, then please note 36% of my annual sale is stuck as debtor, which is pretty not a very great number. 36% of my annual revenue is stuck as debtor, which is why it takes me 112 days. It takes me 112 days to recover, to get my credit, to get basically paid from my customer. Okay. So this is typically how a DSO is calculated. Now, days purchase outstanding is calculated in the same manner. I'm just going to give you the formula so that you can try it out yourself. I'm going to talk about average payables, just like the above, closing plus opening divided by 2. And I'm going to say purchases per day. Okay, I'm going to talk about purchases per day. Now we also have a concept of days inventory outstanding. Now what is days inventory outstanding? It's basically nothing but an efficiency of understanding how many days do you hold your inventory, right? So how many days you hold your inventory. This is very important formula as well, because it helps you understand how many days your entire inventory is stuck. Okay, here you will take average inventory, and again this will be opening plus closing, and you will divide it by your COGS. COGS is your cost of goods sold per day. Okay, cost of goods sold per day. So when you divide your average inventory by cost of goods sold per day, you will get days inventory outstanding. That will give you an idea how many days you are actually holding an inventory. Okay, now you can do this, you can change the formula, you can do purchases per month, then you will get how many months you're holding. So let me give you an example here. If I change this from divided by 365 to divided by 12, I will get 4. 4 is basically nothing but months. So I'm getting 3.68 months. Okay. Same way you can, if you want to do the calculations as per months, you can do it as per month, otherwise per days. Now the next formula I would like to talk to you about, okay, is so we've done liquidity. We'll do profitability ratios very quickly. Jagan sir, I'm going to eat away 5 minutes of your time, so bear with me. profitability ratios. Okay, profitability ratios, we know the simple ones. Profit margin. So we can have gross profit margin, we can have net profit margin. What is gross profit margin? Gross profit divided by sales. Net profit divided by sales is net profit margin. What is gross profit? Gross profit is all your sales minus direct expenses. For those of you who were a part of my previous session would remember, we drew a horizontal income statement where we calculated gross profit. Net profit is equal to gross profit minus all your indirect expenses, minus all your minus all your taxes. Okay. So if we are going to do only gross profit minus expenses, it's going to be net profit before tax margin, net profit before tax margin, and then we can always have net profit after tax margin, which is going to be a gross profit minus indirect expense minus tax divided by sales. Then from a profitability ratio perspective, we can have return on assets and return on equity, right? So basically, the return on equity is your profit after tax or earning after tax divided by your assets. Okay. So yeah, so hold on before I come to that. So let me explain you what your return on equity means. Your return on equity is that kind of a ratio which concerns a company shareholder. So from a shareholder perspective, what is the return that they are getting? Okay. So when I say what is the return that they are getting, the question will be, is your profit really their return? Right? So is their profit really their return? So we can have arguments on that bit, because we can actually say that the return that an equity shareholder gets is not really the profit of the company, but what is the dividend, right? What is the dividend, right? What is the dividend? Now we have got two concepts for it. There are two schools of thoughts. One school of thought says, listen, don't worry about the dividend part of it. Whatever is the profit after tax, it gets split as profit after tax is nothing but profit carried to balance sheet, that is reinvested, plus the dividend paid off, right? Sorry, plus the dividend paid off. Now both of this put together is profit after tax. So one school of thought says whether it is dividend paid off, that's actual money which the shareholders will receive immediately, and profit which is carried to balance sheet is getting carried forward for a future time. It is still the income. So if you go with that concept, profit after tax divided by average equity is your return on equity. And the second concept here is profit. This is the dividend by equity. That's a second school of thought which says dividend by equity is my return on equity. So whichever school of thought you belong to, you can consider it. Both are accepted. Now we will take the return on assets. The return on assets is again net income or PAT divided by average assets, right? How many times is your asset turning over to generate the income? Now that's your concept. It is calculated in percentage. So you will again be able to understand how the calculations happen if you see from a percentage perspective. So what percentage of your assets turn into income? So if I have got, let's calculate here. If I have earned an income of PAT of 490, and you remember gross net, my gross FA is this much. So what is the percentage of it? Right? So what is the percentage of it? The percentage of it is 65%. That means that my fixed assets is 750. My profit is 490. So 490 divided by 750, that is 65% of my fixed assets comes out as profit. So that is your return on assets. Okay. Now we'll move on to the next ratio. We have done activity ratio, which is one of it. What I've showed you is days sales outstanding, inventory sales outstanding, and I've also showed you days purchase outstanding. They're all parts of activity ratio. Then I will show you now asset turnover ratio. So we're gonna do next one. We're gonna do activity ratio. One of the activity ratio that I'm gonna talk to you about is asset turnover ratio. So what is asset turnover ratio? It is basically how many times your turnover measures to your assets, right? So what is your turnover? Basically, your turnover is your sales, your revenue, however you would like to call it, divided by assets. So what is it here? So here in my case, the revenue is 2,200, and I'm going to divide it by the assets that I've got here, gross assets. So which means 2.9 times the asset is what the the fixed assets turns over into, which means 2.93 times the assets is my turnover, which is again a healthy measure, right? Because it is more than one. Then I'm going to move on to capital structure ratio. Capital structure ratio, we have, so 10 minutes and I'll be done with this. Capital structure ratio, we will be talking about, under capital structure ratio, we will be talking about capital structure ratios and coverage ratios, okay? We'll be talking about these two, and with that, we'll be done with our ratio section. Under capital structure ratio, I'm going to talk about equity ratio. Equity ratio. Then I'm going to talk to you about debt ratio. So what is equity ratio? Equity ratio is total equity divided by total capital employed. Now, I'm not going to compare it with this balance sheet because it doesn't have preference shares. So I'm going to take an example that I've got an equity of 300, and I'm going to take an example that my total capital is 300 of equity plus 200 of preference shares, right? So my total equity ratio is 0.6, or if I want to put it as percentage, 60% of my total capital is 60% of my total capital is the equity part of it. Okay. Now, there's another school of thought for it. There's another school of thought for equity ratio. The other school of thought will say total capital including debt. Total capital including debt. So here again, 300 is my equity. If you remember, I said 300 is my equity plus 200 is my preference share plus 500 is my debt. Okay, then my total capital employed is 1,000. So my equity ratio as a part of total capital ratio including debt is 30%. Now what is debt ratio? Debt ratio is debt divided by total capital including debt. Now what was my debt here in my previous example? 500. And then what is my total capital? Total capital is 1,000. So my debt ratio is 50% or 0.5. Now, a favorite one for all those who deal with bankers, debt equity ratio. Debt equity ratio is debt divided by total equity. Okay, total equity. So for the purpose of equity, even preference share will be considered as a part of equity. So here we have debt of 500 divided by 300 plus 200. So 1, which is very optimal or ideal. Okay. So with that, we are done with debt equity ratio. Now we will have interest coverage ratio. Okay. What is interest coverage ratio? Interest coverage ratio is how much does your profit cover your interest. Okay. So what profit will we take? We will take EBIT, because we will take EBIT after tax actually, because we need to know how much profit you have, which will cover your interest. Okay, divided by interest component. So if you go here in our current example, what is our EBIT? Our EBIT is 850. From that, I'm going to remove the tax, because tax is again a cash that I have to pay out. Okay, so what is my net profit after tax but before interest? It is 690 divided by what is my interest component. I'm going to assume based on this that my interest component is 200. So what it really means is I have got 3.45 times profit when compared to my interest. So I have got 3.45 times my interest available as profit. Hence, that is covered good enough, well enough. Okay. So anything more than one is considered good. Have I left out anything else? Yes, of course. Debt service coverage ratio. So debt service coverage ratio is another concept that we'll talk about. This will be the last ratio for the day. It is basically nothing but the measure of how well the company or the organization can pay its debt. Okay. Here, what we will take is, we will consider taking the operating income after tax before interest. Basically, what we are saying is we don't need depreciation, because depreciation is nothing but non-cash flow item. So we don't care about depreciation. So what we are doing is we are taking your EBITDA before depreciation and before interest, and we are removing the tax component from it. So this is the net profit, net operating income after tax before interest and depreciation. Basically, we have got, and that we will divide it by, I'll take an assumption that repayment is, let's say, some 300. So when we'll divide, we will take divided by how much are we going to repay during the year? 300 plus what is the interest we are going to pay during the year? You're going to pay an interest of 200. So we need 500. Basically, we need 200 to pay the interest and 300 to pay repayment. So 500 we need in cash to be able to pay interest and repayment. So we have got profit covered to the extent of 1.68 times. So what it really means is I need 300 to repay and 200 to pay tax. I need 500. Okay. What is my profit after tax before depreciation? It is 840. So 840 is 1.68 times 500. So I've got covered till 1.68 times, which again, if it is greater than 1, it is good. Okay. With this, I'm coming to the end of my session. And with this, we are covered all the ratios that I intended to cover. Let me see if we have got some queries. So if you've got some queries, I'm happy to answer. If you don't have any queries, it's also fine. You can always email it to us. You can always ask us later. I am going to hand over this session to Jagat. Okay, so before that, some query. How is total capital calculated? Yes. So your total capital is equity plus debt plus your preference share. Okay. All of that put together is your total capital. Yes. And your total equity will include your equity share capital plus preference share capital. Then we've got some questions on how is total capital. I've answered total capital. Yes, Karthik, you can get the Excel sheet. If you understand from that, very good. Shouldn't be a problem. We've got some more questions. How often should we monitor ratios? We should monitor ratios as often as you monitor your MIS. My suggestion always is you should monitor your balance sheets, your financial statements, your MIS, and your ratios on a monthly basis. That will be very useful. Okay, and then someone asking me, paying for insurance for service, I'm offering my customer, which can be claimed by us from the customer. Price includes the insurance. So you include insurance since you are including insurance as a part of your revenue, it is a part of your revenue. And then there will be some expense which is pertaining to this insurance, which will go as a part of expense. So you have to make no adjustment. Just make sure that all your expenses pertaining to this insurance is covered as a part of expense. And whatever is your revenue to the customer is your revenue. So you don't have to make any adjustment. This will get covered directly. So about the recording of the session, I'll allow TiE Secretariat to answer. Now, is there any other question that I've missed out? Just one moment. Let me just see from the back end any other questions I've missed out. Then I'll come to the latest questions. Somebody says, I'm a new entrepreneur. How is a cash flow statement different from balance sheet and P&L? Balance sheet is basically a statement of all your assets and liabilities as at a date. A profit and loss statement is a statement of income and expense for a period, and cash flow statement pertains only to the cash transactions, cash inflows and cash outflows. So there's a question on, in case of small companies where revenue is not stable, shall we use weighted average to find out cash? No, you shouldn't. It really is not correct. You should use simple average. That's when you will come to know over that period of time. Let it be a problem initially, let there be lack of stability, all that is perfectly fine. If you try to use weighted average method, what will happen is you are basically showing a skewed results. That's not correct. You have to use average sale, average debtors for the year, so that you come to know for that year what was your average sales outstanding. As long as it's improving year on year, which is fine. If it's not improving year on year, then no amount of justification works. So weighted average, calculate average debtors it's not the correct practice in my view. So is there any other question I've missed out? Are there any ratios for software, any software for ratios? I'm not aware of it, but just because one of you have asked this question, along with TiE Chennai, we are doing some recorded e-learning sessions for non-finance background people, and we'll be happy to extend it complimentary to all the participants of the session. So if you write to TiE Secretariat, we will give you video recordings of these sessions, not this session, but again, simpler form of, where ratios are explained and other concepts of financial statements are explained. Yes, all ratios are applicable to all sorts of business, whether it's small or it's large. If you have debt, then you can consider the debt-related ratios. If you don't have debts, then do not consider the debt-related ratios. Now, I think we are running short of time. Please keep typing your questions. We will come back to you offline. But I'm going to hand over the question to Jagan. Saurav, can you hand over the session to Jagan?